Hi, I'm going to talk about some basic ideas about playing loud and soft on the cello. This is really kind of a starter kit for that. Probably even if you're a beginner, you're aware that pressure is the number one thing that makes your sound loud or soft. If you press down, it makes a louder sound than if you're light. We try to do that with arm weight by dropping the arm down onto the string. So it turns out that angling the hair of the bow, in other words turning to fuller hair, does not increase your sound, because the way that bow is supposed to be angled, you're supposed to have your tip tilted slightly towards you so that the flat part of the hair is facing the ground, facing gravity, which means you will not have full hair on the bow. And when you drop your gravity weight down towards the ground to drop it onto the string, you're playing on the inner edge of the hair. So tilting to more hair only makes you pull towards yourself, which is actually harder to play loud. I mean, you might feel like you get a louder sound, but it's not actually very ergonomic. Conversely, if you do play super on the inner edge of the hair really lightly, but again, that's a pressure issue. That's not really about the hair. If I use a lot of weight, even though I'm on the inner edge of the hair, it still makes a decent amount of sound. Okay, so pressure, or the amount that you're pushing down on the bow, is the number one thing that's going to affect your loudness or softness. Then the next thing is speed, but that's also really contingent upon pressure. So for example, you might say, well, if you pull your bow faster, it makes a louder sound, and if you pull it slower, it makes a softer sound. And that's true, and that was basically the same kind of pressure for both of those bows. But if I play very lightly and I pull my bow fast, and I play with a heavier bow and it's slow, then you can see that it's the pressure more than the speed. They can go together, but again, it's pressure that is really guiding the volume of the sound. A lot of people talk about how close to the bridge you are. There is a sort of, it's not a myth exactly, but a sort of ism that if you play closer to the bridge, it will be bigger sound, and if you play up on the fingerboard, it's not as big a sound. There is some truth in this. To some extent, it's a little bit more quality of sound. When you play up on top of the fingerboard, your sound can have a very, what we call a covered quality. It can be kind of muffled, but it can also be really beautiful and soft if you play with a very light bow for a really specific soft sound that is up on top of the end of the fingerboard. If you just get your bow down close to the bridge, it's not going to actually sound great. There's a loud version, there's a soft version, and neither one of those is a very clear note. To play with your bow close to your bridge, you need more different kinds of variables. Usually that's for when we're playing very high on the instrument, up in thumb position, loud, slow bows. So for right now, if you're not a very experienced player, I would not experiment very much with changing where your bow placement is. Go for a sound that is halfway between the bridge and the fingerboard, and see if you can really work on getting the dynamic difference there. But one thing that people sometimes don't know about is where in the bow you play makes a big difference. It's really hard to play light at the frog, and it's much easier to play lightly at the tip in the upper half of the bow because of the way the bow is weighted. Here down at this part of the bow, you have your frog, which is the heaviest part of the bow, and your hand, which is heavy as well. And so when we want to make a big sound, it's really easy to just kind of drop your weight into the string at the frog. When you want to play softly, whether it's a quick bow or a slow bow, I'm maybe a little bit up the string also to help with that kind of sound production, but it's so much easier to play softly when you're up in the upper half of the bow. So try that as one of your variables if you haven't experienced that. Work on how you're putting your weight down into the string, get yourself halfway between bridge and fingerboard, and try to stay up in the upper half for soft things, lower half for louder things. Good luck.